Hi guys, Natalie Willis, the baby sleep trainer here. You get to see inside the closet in my office because I broke the door off and I can't figure out how to put it back on. So you'll have to excuse it for this week. We are going to be talking about how I overcame postpartum anxiety. And the reason I decided to bring this up as something that I wanted to talk about is because anytime I talk about starting baby sleep trainer, I always talk about the anxiety that I felt when I first had my daughter. It was not an easy time for me in my life, and the lack of sleep really exacerbated it. And instead of going into too much more detail about that, only because I feel like if you're struggling from this, or rather if you're struggling with this, then you already know. I don't need to describe it to you. What I do want to do is I want to give you some tactics on how I overcame my postpartum anxiety, because anxiety has been something that I've struggled with anyway in my life, but it was really, really acute postpartum. I think that's a time when a lot of women suffer from it. So here are my tips and tricks and secrets for how I was able to overcome this in my life. First, what I want to say is I feel that postpartum anxiety tends to sort of occur a lot in two scenarios. One, really type A women like me tend to struggle with postpartum anxiety because maybe we are the type of women that in our life, maybe before we have children or once we're able to overcome this anxiety, we are in control. We're in control of everything that happens, and generally when we're in control, we can make things more or less smooth out. So if we have a problem, it's usually not too difficult for us to figure out a solution. And when you have a baby, you can't fix the baby. The things that are happening with the baby, the disruptions and all of the things that are really difficult about having a baby, you can't make that go away. You can't make it any better. Sometimes even when you do things like sleep train, there are still these challenges that you can't overcome, and I find that really triggers anxiety. And the other thing is it can be chemical, and sometimes there's a combination. If you tend towards anxiety, you might tend towards like sort of having maybe a little bit of an imbalance in the chemicals in your brain that kind of help you regulate your mood or your feelings, and then that can either stand alone or it can exacerbate in kind of that type A situation. I feel like I was definitely a combination of both. And before you implement any of these techniques, the first thing that you want to do is talk to your doctor. Talk to your own medical doctor, whether that's your OBGYN or your personal doctor. Make sure that you're ruling out anything that can be of a concern for the safety of yourself or your family or your children. But assuming you've talked to your doctor first and they've approved any of these techniques, here's what I would suggest that you explore. First and foremost, you want to enter some sort of talk therapy. This is going to be a really traditional type of therapy with a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, that sort of thing. You want to do this for two reasons. A good therapist is going to help you identify the root of your anxiety. They're going to help you, and often it can be multi-pronged. So they're going to first help you identify, like, is this as a result of a trauma or something that I experienced as a child? Is it because I have this type A personality and I feel like I need to be in control of everything? Did something happen with the way I was parented and that's triggering this anxiety? So it's really important to understand the cause and the root of the anxiety. The other thing that an excellent therapist is going to do is they're going to give you actual techniques, like things that you can do to help you overcome, recognizing the anxiety is coming on, and then things that you can do to overcome it. So kind of like behavioral exercises and that sort of thing. The next thing that you want to do when you have entered into talk therapy and you feel like that's really effective for you and you're starting to get some traction and understanding of why you're struggling with anxiety, I would highly suggest that you find a hypnotherapist. And hypnotherapy, I think either people kind of know about it or they don't. I want to make sure that everyone is really clear on the fact that it's totally legitimate. It's used in clinical settings. Again, any questions, you can talk to your doctor about that. But it's a really incredibly effective tool. So when you have talk therapy and you can identify the cause and the root of your anxiety, that's great. Now you understand why you have it, and maybe you might have some techniques to help you work through the anxiety when it's coming on. But what you really need to do in order to genuinely and truly overcome the anxiety is you need to change the dialogue that's happening in your subconscious, because a lot of what's happening back there is most of everything that's happening in your subconscious you're not really realizing, and it's triggering you to have this reaction, right? And so hypnotherapy is a lot like kind of opening your brain and going into your subconscious and inserting new thoughts and beliefs. And a hypnotherapist works with you verbally as well to kind of help you with the things that you've identified that are the causes for your anxiety, Then they help you say, well, what new thoughts or beliefs would you need to have in order to not feel this anxiety? So let's, for example, say that you have a lot of anxiety over your infant being in danger. This is a really common thing women will have anxiety about, right? And okay, now you know that this is something called an intrusive thought. This is very common with postpartum moms. And then your therapist, your talk therapist has given you these tools. Okay, I'm doing these breathing exercises, I feel it coming on, so on and so forth. Well, what your hypnotherapist is going to do is they're going to go in there and they're going to say, hey, subconscious mind, you need to accept and adopt the belief that your baby's safe, that you're doing everything you can to take care of them, and then they're not in danger. And then what happens is when you are done with hypnotherapy and you're operating in your daily life, that's the belief that your subconscious has accepted. So then it can help you not even have that trigger in the first place. And that was a really basic example, and it can obviously get more complicated than that, but you don't always even need to go to a hypnotherapist that many times. Many families or many women find that they will go to talk therapy on an ongoing basis, but they only need to see a hypnotherapist a few times. For both of these practitioners, make sure that you're doing your research. So Yelp reviews, Google reviews, recommendations from friends, Instagram, if you have anyone in your area, those are going to be really effective ways of identifying who's a good therapist or who's an excellent therapist. In many major cities, there are even low-cost options, especially for talk therapy. So Google search, do your research. It's worth putting some effort into this. And in some cases, your insurance might even cover it. And then this is my last secret weapon when it comes to overcoming my anxiety. I will admit that my anxiety has abated a lot in general because my children have gotten older, and as a result, a lot of the things that triggered the therapy have kind of diminished. But the real thing that I do on a daily basis that's really, really helped me overcome my anxiety is meditation. And meditation is also very legitimate. This is even used in the US military now and in a number of clinical settings. But meditation is amazing because it really changes the composition of your brain. It really changes the way that your brain functions. I think sometimes meditation can be kind of intimidating for people because you either are familiar with some sort of like guided meditation that you've maybe heard online or on YouTube where they're telling you to like relax and whatever, or you think that there's some key or trick to it. Meditation can be very, very, very easy. The way I meditate is every night before I go to sleep, I am laying down in silence and I close my eyes and I breathe in to the count of 5, and then I breathe out to the count of 5. And I keep count on my fingers, and my goal is to do that 5 times in a row so 5 times in, 5 times out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, without breaking my concentration and my mind wandering to something else, which means I have to concentrate really hard on the counting. And if I do catch that I drift off to some other thought, I'll be like, oh, and all I have to do is start again. Not only is this really an effective way of falling asleep if you struggle with that, but that literally is it. That is all meditation is. Meditation, and you can do way more explanation on this, but it's really quieting the brain and giving it a moment to rest and block out all of those distractions. Any one of these 3 elements are going to be really effective in helping you overcome postpartum anxiety, but I can all but assure you that if you were to implement all 3 of these after speaking with your medical doctor and making sure that there's no other, elements of this that you need to be addressing in a medical way, it can really surprise you how much you can overcome this issue. So if you have any questions or experiences that you want to share in the comments, please go ahead and do so, and I will see you all next week.